God bless.
Russia, Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia.
Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold.
Buy gold.
Oh, okay. Buy gold. All right.
We're bringing this story from RT, which obviously is censored out in the West. This is probably not a good leading point for Susan. She might not like the fact that we're reading from RT. But
are we carrying water for Putin, Gonz?
This isn't water. Maybe some gold.
Okay, good. Okay. As long as it's not water.
As long as it's not water. Gold-backed ruble could be a game changer. This is an RT article that came out on April 2nd, 2022. It says here, the Bank of Russia has resumed gold purchases this week, but more importantly, the regulator is doing so at a fixed price of 5,000 rubles, about $59 per gram, between March 28th and June 30th, raising the possibility of Russia returning to the gold standard for the first time in over a century. If the country takes the next step, as has been proposed this week, to sell its commodities priced in rubles, these combined moves could have huge implications for the ruble, the U.S. dollar, and the global economy. To get some answers, RT spoke to precious metals analyst Ronan Manley at Bullion Star Singapore. So don't worry, Susan.
Ronan Manley.
They're just talking to the Manley guy from Bullion Star in Singapore, not some Russian oligarch.
Mr. Manley.
Yeah.
No.
So it's an interview style. I'll read a little bit just to kind of get an idea here. Why is setting a fixed price for gold and rubles significant? And Manley answers, by offering to buy gold from Russian banks at a fixed price of 5,000 rubles per gram, the Bank of Russia has both linked the ruble to gold and, since gold trades in U.S. dollars, set a floor price for the ruble in terms of the U.S. dollar. And I was thinking, man, this is actually, if it's not like, obviously this all feels planned, right? Like, wow, how convenient that Russia with all their gold reserves is all of a sudden like, USA putting sanctions on us, better tie that currency back to gold. And that forces the U.S. to not be able to push the price down. Yeah. Go ahead.
We've been tracking for about a year the abnormal uptick in gold purchases, both by the central banks of Russia and China, which sort of signaled that something
they were
weird.
Ready for this. They were very ready for this occasion.
It's almost like they had been preparing this contingency plan for a while now.
Right. We can see this linkage in action since Friday, 25th March, when the Bank of Russia made the fixed price announcement. The ruble was trading at around $100 or 100 to the U.S. dollar at that time, but has since strengthened and is nearing 80 to the dollar. Why? Because gold has been trading on international markets at about, it gets into some of the details, and it gets a little complicated with the math and the charting and all that. We don't have to get into all that.
But the point is, it seems to be working.
It's working, because the U.S., if the U.S. wants to continue to destroy the ruble, they basically have to manipulate the price of gold down, to do that, because the gold price is fixed. So, interesting.
And the difference is, it is quite the play. And the difference is, just for those who might need a review, there's the gold standard for currency, and then there's other standards. But one of the most popular in today's global economies are fiat currency, which is basically the price or the value of a piece of currency based more or less on debt, the existence of debt mixed with the authority behind it guaranteeing that debt, which is, of course, what the U.S. has been on for quite a few decades now, and they sort of forced it on the rest of the world.
They did.
And anytime anybody wanted to go back to a gold standard, the U.S. suddenly found, terrorists or something in their country. To fight.
There's things to do. Must keep that printer running.
Yeah. Which is an interesting timing on it because, hey, Russia's already at war. What's the U.S. going to do? Be at more war?
Yeah. Well, the play isn't just with gold, because the next question here, what does it mean for oil? Russia is the world's largest natural gas exporter and the world's third largest oil exporter. We are seeing right now that Putin is demanding that foreign buyers, importers of Russian gas, must pay for this natural gas using rubles. This immediately links the price of natural gas to rubles and because of the fixed link to the gold price. So Russian natural gas is now linked via the ruble to gold. We have gold-backed oil from Russia. That's that's like, whoa, okay. We were talking about commodity moving back towards a commodity-based world order, and here we are.
This lines up perfectly with the analysis that you brought last week, which is, as far as international commerce is concerned, or sort of the economy of individual states, moving directly back to a commodity-based value system, at least for the big boys. And that's exactly what happened. You've got at least two commodities wrapped up in this attempt to strengthen the ruble. And so far, so good. Man, I should have bought rubles when I had the chance.
Well, when it was dipping, we did make that joke, buy the dip, buy the ruble dip, but it was true.
I know. I was giving that advice away for free, and as usual, I was not taking my own advice.
Right.
I cannot believe it.
Well, you're a giver, It's more good to give. It's the whole biblical thing, Gotta give, man. Gotta give.
Okay. One of these days, I'd love to receive. I wonder what that's like.
You receive the free gift of salvation, my man. You're good.
You're
good to go.
That's true. Thanks for the reminder.
What does it mean for the price of gold? By playing both sides of the equation, i.e. linking the ruble to gold and then linking energy payments to the ruble, the Bank of Russia and the Kremlin are fundamentally altering the entire working assumption of the global trade system while accelerating change in the global monetary system. This wall of buyers in search of physical gold to pay for real commodities could certainly torpedo and blow up the paper gold markets of the LBMA and COMEX. And actually, that's another interesting thing because, if the gold prices go to where they're supposed to go, I mean, we're talking a lot of gains for gold, but also it weakens the dollar even more. So it's an interesting situation the U.S. is in. The fixed peg between
not just the U.S. dollar, but we're also talking the petrodollar.
Well, because most of the world's fiat is pegged to the U.S. dollar, which is pegged to the oil side of things for the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
It gets into more stuff here. What does it mean for the ruble? And I also think it's interesting. It kind of forces the U.S. to look at not just gold as commodities, but I think this has something to do with Bitcoin. I think the U.S. might be getting ready to roll out a big Bitcoin campaign. Here's why. Because think about what happened with gold, right? There was a big gold rush. Everyone fled west, try to get gold. And then in 1933, because of the turmoil in the economy and everything else, the government or the Fed decided it's illegal to own gold. Sell your gold, trade it in for U.S. dollars. And so they did. And then
full on confiscated a lot of gold.
Right? And then after the fact, then the government, now that there was a reserve of gold, with the federal government, they raised the price and, all the, forget all the, the peons out there and they're, they're duped into selling their gold to the government for, pennies on the dollar. That can happen again. Why is Bitcoin called digital gold or gold 2.0? If you look at the history of gold and what happened under this new world order system, that's not a good sign for Bitcoin. But before it gets locked down, it's going to have to go way up because you want everybody to buy in, right? And then they can roll out the CBDCs. That's when they can go, hey.
So you're thinking they're going to do a national sort of Bitcoin confiscation program?
I think they're going to try maybe a few years. If this thing keeps rolling the way it is, I have a feeling they're going to try something like that because otherwise the U.S. dollar, they're going to say this is to save the dollar, to save the West, to say, whatever.
Right.
And so that's why the people that own these new assets will have to, they're contributing to the country. They're doing it for
your patriotic
duty to,
And don't worry, we'll give you the
we'll
CBDC
compensate you with the CBDC and we'll track it. So it's very.
That is a nightmare.
I know. But I think that's kind of what they're planning to do. I don't know if they'll pull it off. But I can see that being a big play with the CBDC thing as we move forward here, and why the I don't know. You can get into all kinds of corners and topics of Bitcoin and the ins and outs and the rabbit trails. But I think there's something to do with
folks. Hardware wallets.
And that's the thing. When the government, and that's going to be the big thing. You don't have to give your money or your Bitcoin up to the government, but are they going to make that illegal? Are they going to make you some kind of terrorist because you own Bitcoin?
Yeah.
That's really the fear.
Well, we already know that's that's a very useful strategy that they've already done.
Yeah. So let me just wrap with this. What does it mean for the U.S. dollar? Since 1971, the global reserve status of the U.S. dollar has been underpinned by oil, and the petrodollar era has only been possible due to both the world's continued use of U.S. dollars to trade oil and the USA's ability to prevent any competitor to the U.S. dollar. But what we are seeing right now looks like the beginning of the end of that 50-year system and the birth of a new gold and commodity-backed multilateral monetary system. The freezing of Russia's foreign exchange reserves has been the trigger, which is so funny. It's like, we did this for what? To stop Putin with this war thing, but it's just making things way worse for the U.S. The giant commodity-strong countries of the world, such as China and the oil-exporting nations, may now feel that now is the time to move to a new, more equitable monetary system. It's not a surprise. They have been discussing it for years. While it's while it's still too early to say how the U.S. dollar will be affected, it will come out of this period weaker and less influential than before. So that's kind of the obviously this is RT. You got to take that with a grain of salt, but also some truth in there that this is the whole sanction thing is shooting the U.S. shooting themselves in the foot in a certain way because it triggered all this stuff. Which is why it's kind of like, seems like part of the big agenda to reset everything.
It's almost as if there's been a long-standing plan being executed to execute some sort of great reset on the whole system.
Well, it's just funny because it's one of those things Biden's like, set the sanctions, Putin, evil man. And Putin's like, oh, yes, just this is when I peg to gold, It's like
isn't it funny, though? I mean, the people who pay attention are, have been complaining about the fact, that we've been off the gold standard for quite some time and how messed up that is and how it only serves to empower existing power structures and put more authority into the hands of those at the top of the pyramid, if you will. And that, having a currency based on gold is sort of like if you want to talk about equitable currency system, if the piece of paper actually represents an physical piece of value in the world, that's a little bit more equitable. But no, it's Putin, the evil psychopath, who is doing the thing, who's like making this, going back to a more equitable economic system. And so we need to find some alternative to the new Hitler's weird evil plan to value his money based on commodities. And that will be, I'm sure it'll work out so well for us, Gonz.